Kwame Mensah was always the most confident man in the room as the CEO of one of the largest tech companies in Nigeria. He accumulated success and wealth like no one else at 35. His life seemed perfect: luxury mansions, sports cars, and the constant company of people eager to flatter him. For Kwame, the world was a game of power and control, a game he always won. One Saturday afternoon, Kwame was hanging out with some friends in one of the most unlikely places for someone of his status, a local Nando's. It was an ironic stop, a way to entertain themselves by pretending to live an ordinary life. Sitting around a table at the back of the restaurant, his friends chatted casually, but as always, Kwame dominated the conversation. "You've done it all," Kwame said. "Kwesi Boateng," one of his oldest friends taking a bite of his chicken, "made millions overnight. You can have whoever you want, but I doubt you can win this next bet." Kwame raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "I'm listening." Kwesi grinned, clearly having planned his provocation. "I bet you can't marry a woman who has absolutely nothing to do with our world, and I don't mean models or businesswomen. I'm talking about someone really ordinary." Kwame frowned as the other friends exchanged amused glances. "What do you mean by ordinary?" "I mean," Kwesi said discreetly, pointing at a waitress cleaning tables nearby, "I bet you can't win over and marry someone like her, a single mother, the waitress here at Nando's. Let's see you bring someone like her into your world." Kwame followed Kwesi's gaze. The waitress in question was Aisha Nkrumah, a 28-year-old who had worked at Nando's for a while to support her 5-year-old daughter, Zuri. Aisha was quiet and hardworking, never letting the stress of difficult customers or the exhausting routine of a single mom affect her. To most people in Kwame's circle, she would have been invisible. "You want me to marry the waitress?" Kwame asked with disbelief and a hint of amusement in his tone. "Exactly. And I'll give you 8 billion naira if you manage it. No contracts, no schemes." "It has to be a real marriage," Kwesi said, his eyes gleaming with the challenge. 8 billion naira was pocket change to Kwame, but the challenge itself intrigued him. Kwame Mensah never turned down a bet for him. It wasn't about the money, it was about winning. Aisha, with her simple life so far removed from his reality, seemed like the perfect opportunity for another victory. 8 billion naira. Kwame smiled, raising his drink. "This will be easy. Get the check ready, Kwesi, because I'm going to win." His friends laughed, convinced they were witnessing the beginning of yet another triumph for the unstoppable Kwame Mensah. Deep down, Kwame felt a new sense of excitement. Aisha would be a different kind of challenge, and he liked challenges. Kwame watched Aisha more closely as she cleaned the tables. Her light brown hair was tied in a ponytail, and she wore no noticeable makeup. There was something in her eyes that intrigued him, a mix of weariness and resilience. It was clear she worked hard to keep her life on track. When she approached to clear some empty cups, Kwame decided to make his move. "Aisha, right?" He glanced at her briefly, her expression neutral. "Yes, can I help you with something?" "Call me Kwame," he said with a confident smile. "I don't think you've served me before." Aisha blinked, surprised by the remark. "I've worked here for months, you probably didn't notice." He chuckled, shaking his head. "Probably not, but that changes today. How about we grab a coffee sometime?" She raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "Sorry, I'm working." Kwame didn't give up, keeping his smile. "Not now, of course, but you must get a day off, right? We could chat a little." Aisha stared at him for a few moments before replying, "I need to get back to work." But that only made him want to try harder. Aisha wasn't like the other women he was used to, charming with a few words. There was something about her resistance that challenged him, and Kwame didn't shy away from challenges. As she returned to collect more empty cups and toss them in the trash, he kept his eyes on her. "I'm persistent." "Aisha, you'll find that out. I'll keep asking until you say yes." She gave a polite smile, unaffected by his charm. "Good luck with that." That response only motivated him more. What had started as a simple bet among friends now felt personal. Kwame Mensah always got what he wanted, and he was determined to win. Aisha, just like he had won every bet before. As Kwesi and the others finished their meals, Kwame gave Aisha one last glance before leaving. He knew that the next time he saw her, he would be more direct. If there was one thing he understood, it was that no one resisted his charm for long, and Aisha Nkrumah would be no exception. Kwame Mensah had never backed down from a challenge, especially after Kwesi had raised the bet to 8 billion naira. This wasn't just about the money, it was about pride. He was set on getting Aisha, the Nando's waitress, to accept his invitation and eventually marry him. With each passing day, Kwame felt more focused on his goal. Deep down, he knew the bet was superficial, but the idea of being turned down bruised his ego. Let's have some fun, he thought. On the following Tuesday, Kwame returned to Nando's at the same time. He watched Aisha as she attended to other customers. She was professional, always focused, and quick. Something about her seriousness intrigued him. It was probably exactly what made her different from the women he usually met. Aisha seemed strong, capable, and completely uninterested in anything he had to offer. Kwame was used to women trying to impress him or earn his attention, but Aisha seemed indifferent to it all. When Aisha came to his table to take his order, he intercepted her with a confident smile. "Hey, Aisha, I thought maybe you were expecting to see me again." She raised her eyebrows, not hiding her surprise. "Didn't know you came here so often." "Well, I think I'll start coming more often," he said playfully. "You know, great service and all." Aisha shot him a skeptical look and jotted down his order. But before she could leave, Kwame decided to try once more. "So how about that coffee, just to get to know each other better?" he insisted. She studied him for a moment, clearly annoyed by his persistence, but she took a deep breath. "Look, I appreciate it, but I'm really busy. My life doesn't leave room for casual meetups." Kwame realized that if he kept using a casual approach, she'd push him away even more. Changing tactics, he lowered his tone and said, "I get that you're busy. I promise I'm not here to make your life harder. I just want to get to know you better." She looked ready to turn him down again, but something in Kwame's calm and serious expression made her hesitate. Finally, Aisha let out a small sigh and agreed. "All right, Kwame, but it'll be a quick coffee. I don't have time for much more than that." It was progress, and for Kwame, that was enough for now. He just needed a small opening to begin his plan, and now he had one. That same afternoon, they met at a nearby cafe. Aisha arrived on time, still in her work uniform and visibly uncomfortable with the situation. Kwame, on the other hand, was completely at ease. They sat at a table in the back, away from the other customers, and he watched as she picked up the menu with little interest. "So, Aisha, what's your life like? How long have you worked here?" he asked, and trying to sound friendly. She shrugged, keeping her tone reserved. "A few years. It's how I support my daughter Zuri. I work a lot, but it's what I can do for now." Kwame nodded, feeling slightly out of his element. For the first time, he was used to conversations about investments, family, and everyday struggles, but realizing that someone lived such a different reality surprised him. For Kwame, work was something he commanded from an office. For Aisha, it was her lifeline. "Do you have any free time?" he asked, curious about how she managed everything. She let out a humorless laugh. "Not much, to be honest. When I'm not working, I'm with my daughter. That takes up most of my time. And you? What's your story?" Kwame smiled, knowing his answer might feel distant to her. "I'm the CEO of a tech company. I work a lot too, but, well, it's a bit of a different lifestyle." Aisha didn't react the way he expected. She just nodded as if she had already figured as much. "I thought so. That's why I was surprised by your invitation. People like you don't usually mix with people like me." There was something about her honesty that bothered him. "Why do you say that? Do you think everyone's the same?" Kwame asked, unsettled. For the first time, Aisha looked directly into his eyes. "It's not that I think everyone's the same. I just find it hard to understand what a wealthy, successful man could want with someone like me. Dear, you could choose anyone from your circle." Kwame felt cornered by her question. He couldn't tell her the truth about the bet, so he gave the only answer he could. "Maybe that's exactly what interests me about you, Aisha. You're not part of that world, and that's rare for me." Aisha let out a sigh, clearly uncomfortable. "Look, Kwame, I'll be honest. My priority is my daughter. She means everything to me, and I'm here because I think you're being genuine, but I don't have time for games." He nodded, and for a brief moment, he felt something shift within him. As committed as he was to the bet, he couldn't deny that there was something about Aisha that challenged him. She was real, straightforward, and unlike anyone he had ever met. "I understand, Aisha. he said softly. I promise there are no games here. Aisha studied him once more, then finished her coffee and stood up. Well, it was a quick coffee, like I said. Kwame smiled. How about we do this again sometime? Maybe a lighter conversation next time. She looked at him, considering the offer. After a moment, she gave a small nod. Maybe. As she walked away, Kwame stayed behind, watching her disappear through the cafe doors. He had taken the first step, and now his curiosity about her grew with every encounter. Kwame was used to achieving his goals quickly, and with Aisha and Nkrumah, he felt the same urgency. After that brief coffee, her image and the sincere words about her daughter stayed in his mind. The bet with Kwesi still echoed in the background, but as the days passed, it felt more like a fleeting incentive. Something deeper in him wanted to understand Aisha, and even he couldn't explain this growing attraction. In the following weeks, Kwame started showing up at Nando's more often. He kept things low-key, making sure not to overdo it, but he seized every opportunity to exchange a few words with Aisha. Little by little, she got used to his presence, and their conversations became more personal, touching on details about both their lives. One afternoon, Kwame realized it was time to take the bet to the next level. He knew that if he kept things casual with quick chats and coffee dates, Aisha wouldn't consider something more serious. He needed to make a bold move, something that would show he was genuinely interested. That calm afternoon at Nando's, as Aisha arranged trays behind the counter, Kwame approached her. Aisha, he began, trying to sound as sincere as possible. I've been thinking a lot about us. I know this might sound sudden, but what do you think about taking this seriously? She looked at him, puzzled, her brow furrowing. Taking what seriously? Kwame took a deep breath, knowing that being direct was his best chance. Marriage. Aisha laughed involuntarily, stunned by the unexpected proposal. Are you serious? I barely know you, Kwame. I know it sounds crazy, he admitted, doing his best to stay composed. But I feel like we have something special, something I've never felt with anyone else. Maybe it's because you're not from my world. Maybe it's because I see something real in you, someone who truly lives a life with purpose. She shook her head, still in disbelief. Are you really suggesting marriage with someone you hardly know? What kind of reality is that? Kwame realized he was losing control of the situation. He knew he needed to be more convincing. I'm not joking, Aisha. I know I come from a very different world, and I know this might sound absurd, but I want to give you and Zuri a better life. Aisha took a deep breath, torn between the instinct to reject him and the strange attraction she felt toward him. It was hard to believe that someone with his lifestyle would be genuinely interested in her, but as she looked into his eyes, she felt a glimmer of hope. I'm not asking for an answer right now, Kwame said, sensing her hesitation. Just think about it. I don't want to pressure you, but I believe we could make this work. Aisha studied him, trying to understand the intentions behind his words. I'll think about it, she finally said before returning to her work, still perplexed. The following days were filled with reflection and doubt for Aisha. She kept questioning Kwame's proposal. After all, he was a man from a world she didn't understand, and her own reality as a single mother and waitress seemed incompatible with the life Kwame offered. However, the idea of marrying him and what it could mean for her daughter Zuri stirred something inside her. As unlikely as it seemed, the proposal could offer a future she'd never be able to provide on her own. A week later, Kwame showed up again at Nando's. He waited for Aisha to finish her shift, and when she came out, he called her, smiling with a mix of confidence and nervousness. Aisha, have you thought about what I asked? She took a deep breath, her expression serious. Do you really think this could work, Kwame? We're from completely different worlds. I'm a waitress with a young daughter. My priority is her, and always will be. I'm not here for games. Kwame nodded, pulling out a small velvet box he had prepared. Opening it, he revealed an elegant but simple ring that sparkled under the restaurant's lights. He knew anything too flashy would intimidate her, so he chose something that reflected sincerity. Aisha, I'm serious, he said, holding the ring between his fingers. I want you to see this as a chance for us to build something together. We could give Zuri a different kind of life, and if you say yes, I promise I will never let you down. Aisha's heart raced. The proposal felt surreal, but Kwame's expression was so determined, so genuine, that for a moment she believed it. Why me, Kwame? With all your money in your world, why are you here asking me this? She asked, still in disbelief. Because you're different from anyone I've ever met. Maybe for the first time, I see something real in you. She fell silent, her eyes on the ring. This feels so unreal, but I can't ignore that I have a daughter to think about. Maybe I'm being foolish, but I'll accept, for Zuri's sake. Kwame moved closer, slipping the ring onto her finger. I promise I'll make this worth it, Aisha. She exhaled, still surprised by her decision. All right, Kwame, I'm trusting you with that. Kwame smiled, relieved, certain he was one step closer to winning the bet. For Aisha Nkrumah, accepting Kwame Mensah's marriage proposal felt surreal, but necessary. Ever since she became a mother, every decision she made had been for Zuri's well-being. And now, by taking this bold step, her goal was clear: to secure a safer future for her daughter. The transition into this new life happened quickly. Kwame took care of everything with his usual efficiency, ensuring that Aisha and Zuri moved into his mansion. The house was grand, with high ceilings, luxurious furniture, and everything Aisha could never have imagined. Every corner exuded wealth, but to her it felt cold and impersonal. Aisha tried to adjust, but the differences between their worlds were glaring. In those first days, she felt like a visitor in a life that wasn't hers. Kwame, though considerate, kept a careful distance. He seemed genuinely interested in making her feel at home, but his endless meetings and responsibilities prevented a deeper connection. Their first dinner together at the mansion highlighted these differences. They sat at a long dining table, with Kwame at the head, Aisha a few seats away, and Zuri between them. Kwame watched Zuri with a mix of curiosity and unease. The little girl looked around, captivated by the silver cutlery and the sparkle of the crystal glasses. "Do you like it here, Zuri?" Kwame asked, trying to start a conversation. Zuri nodded shyly. "Yes, it's big, like a princess's house." Aisha smiled at her daughter, trying to keep her grounded. "It sure is, sweetie, but remember, this is just a place for us to live. Our life is still the same." Kwame picked up on the caution in Aisha's words and wondered if she felt out of place. He tried to lighten the mood by sharing a childhood story about how he got lost in one of his family's many properties. But despite his efforts, Aisha seemed reserved, as if she was still trying to figure out her role in this new setting. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Aisha began to share more about Kwame's world. He was a man who lived for his work, surrounded by constant meetings and influential people. Meanwhile, Aisha spent most of her time caring for Zuri, supervising her school activities, and trying to settle into the new home. Kwame made an effort to spend time with Aisha and Zuri between his meetings, but his presence often felt distant. He asked about Zuri's routine and tried to participate in family activities, but the disconnect between their lives was obvious. One afternoon, Aisha was helping Zuri with her homework when Kwame walked into the living room and watched them for a few moments. There was a simplicity in the relationship between mother and daughter that he had never experienced, a natural and genuine closeness. "Need any help?" he asked a bit awkwardly. Aisha looked at him, surprised. "You know anything about school homework?" He laughed, shaking his head. "Maybe not, but I can try." Aisha smiled, and for the first time, Kwame felt like he had truly connected with her. He sat down next to them, trying to engage in Zuri's activity, and she giggled at his mistakes while answering the questions. That lighthearted moment felt like a small bridge between their very different worlds. But despite the small progress, Aisha remained skeptical of Kwame's intentions. She knew their marriage hadn't started in the most conventional way, and still felt like something between them was left unsaid. Kwame, on the other hand, was beginning to experience an internal shift he hadn't expected. At first, it was all about pride, a bet to prove he could conquer any challenge. But now Aisha and Zuri's presence was making him question the real purpose of it all. That same night, as Kwame was getting ready for bed, he noticed Aisha sitting at the edge of the bed, lost in thought. "What's wrong?" he asked cautiously. She sighed, looking at him. "Kwame, I think we need to understand what exactly we're doing here. We're not a normal couple. We don't have a story together. And even though you've been thoughtful, I feel like we're just trying to fit into something that might not work." He sat beside her, looking at her sincerely. I understand, Aisha, but would you believe me if I said I'm trying to figure this out too? I want this to work, even though we didn't start in the best way. We can build something real here. Aisha studied him in silence, not sure if she could trust his words. Everything about Kwame seemed too perfect, and she knew his intentions weren't always clear. But despite her doubts, she wanted to believe that perhaps they could build something real. Maybe over time, he could learn to appreciate the simple life she valued so much. For now, I think we can just try, she said with a sigh. But I need you to be honest with me, Kwame. If this isn't real, if this is just an experiment, I'd rather end it now. He nodded, his expression serious. It's real, Aisha. I can promise you that. His response gave Aisha some peace of mind, but the words felt vague. Building a life together was proving to be far more complicated than she had imagined. But at that moment, she decided to give Kwame and herself a chance. As the weeks went by, something unexpected started to happen to Kwame Mensah. Living with Aisha and Zuri was affecting him in ways he never could have predicted. From the start, he knew this marriage was just a bet, a challenge to prove his ability to win. However, the more time he spent with Aisha and her daughter, the more he found himself changed. Zuri's smile and the simplicity with which Aisha approached life stirred an admiration in him that went far beyond any relationship he had ever known. Material achievements, once so important, now seemed empty compared to the authenticity and dedication Aisha showed every day. The way she cared for her daughter and managed everything at home revealed a strength he never found within his social circle. One evening, while they were having dinner together, Kwame realized he was opening up to Aisha more than ever before. He talked about his childhood, the weight of family expectations, and the pressures of being a young CEO. Aisha listened attentively, and he felt like, for the first time, he didn't have to prove anything. He could just be himself. I don't think I've ever had anyone I could really talk to about these things, he admitted, surprised by his own vulnerability. Aisha smiled softly. Sometimes, Kwame, you just need someone to listen. Someone who doesn't expect anything in return. That simple statement hit him hard. He realized how accustomed he was to relationships based on interests, where everything was always in exchange for favors, status, or power. But with Aisha, things felt different. She expected nothing from him except honesty, and that completely disarmed him. Kwame's change deepened over time. He found himself looking for ways to spend more time with Aisha and Zuri, savoring the small moments in daily life that he would have once overlooked. One weekend, he surprised them with a trip to a nearby park, a simple picnic with food he prepared himself, something he knew Aisha would appreciate. When they arrived, Aisha was surprised by the simplicity of the moment, so different from the extravagant style she had known in Kwame. Seeing this more human side of him brought a new perspective, and for a brief moment, she felt light, almost forgetting the scars. As Zuri ran and played with the ball, Kwame and Aisha sat on a bench watching her. "Thank you for coming," he said, breaking the silence. "I know you're being patient with me." She smiled lightly, still cautious. "I'm just trying to understand what's really changed, Kwame. But I have to admit, since you got rid of the company, I've seen a side of you I didn't know before." Kwame nodded, his eyes fixed on Zuri as she played. "I realized that the world with all the wealth and power games didn't bring me happiness. You and Zuri, you brought something real into my life. I've understood that I need much less to be happy." Aisha listened, and little by little she felt the weight of her hurts lighten. The authenticity in Kwame's words was clear, and she started to believe that maybe, just maybe, he was telling the truth this time. During the outing, Kwame suggested a simple guessing game to make Zuri laugh, and as Aisha watched their interaction, she saw how genuine he was with the girl. Zuri was beaming, and with every smile from her daughter, Aisha felt something inside her soften. It was as if the Kwame she had known at the beginning, the arrogant, self-centered man, was fading away, making room for someone much more human. By the end of the day, when they were ready to head home, Zuri fell asleep in the back seat of the car. Kwame, driving calmly, looked at Aisha and said, "I know this was just one day, and it doesn't erase anything I've done, but I hope this can be the start of something new between us." She took a deep breath, thinking about everything they had been through. "I can't promise it will be easy," Aisha replied, But if you keep this up, maybe one day I can trust again." Kwame nodded, feeling a gentle relief, a small light in the middle of a long darkness. He knew Aisha's forgiveness would be a slow and difficult journey, but her response meant there was still hope. The following weeks were a gradual process of rediscovery. Aisha remained cautious, but slowly the moments with Kwame and Zuri began to fill her life with more lightness. They started meeting regularly, and each day revealed more of the new person Kwame was striving to be. He shared simple plans, talked about the volunteer work he had begun doing with families in the city, and showed genuine interest in Zuri's school activities. Aisha saw that he was committed to changing, and that made a huge difference in her heart. She still remembered the betrayal and the bet, but Kwame's consistent actions seemed to gradually dispel that pain. He was becoming the present father Zuri had never had, and the man Aisha had always wanted, though she had thought it impossible to find. Finally, on a calm evening while they were together at her house, Aisha decided it was time to say something she had been holding back since the start of this second chance. "Kwame," she began with a hesitant look, "I want you to know that it still hurts what you did with the factory, the bet. It's not something easy to forget." He looked at her in silence, waiting, his heart heavy, but she continued, taking a breath. "I believe you're changing, and despite everything, I'm willing to try. I just need you to be sincere from now on. I can't handle another disappointment. I can't let Zuri go through this again." Kwame took her hand, feeling emotional. "Aisha, I promise nothing will be like it was before. I'm here for both of you, and that will never change." She smiled, touched for the first time in a long while, feeling she could trust again. It wasn't total forgiveness, but it was a start, a real possibility for rebuilding. She knew there would still be challenges ahead, but she was willing to face the journey alongside Kwame, trusting that the man in front of her was sincere and determined to prove his worth. The new beginning between Kwame and Aisha was built carefully, with every conversation and every act of kindness. Weeks turned into months, and during that time, their relationship matured genuinely. Aisha still held on to some reservations, but Kwame's sincere displays of support and constant presence helped her trust him more and more. Zuri, for her part, already saw Kwame as part of her life and barely hid how much she liked him. Over time, Kwame became a solid father figure for the girl, someone she knew would be there to support her in everything. The trust between him and Aisha was built slowly. Kwame respected Aisha's boundaries, careful not to promise more than he could deliver, always showing his commitment through his actions. He dedicated himself to the support fund for former factory workers, actively participated in Zuri's school needs, and invested his time in activities that brought purpose and meaning to his life. His conversations with Aisha grew deeper and more honest, and he finally felt at peace with the simplicity he had once resisted, accepting it. On a cold December night, Kwame invited Aisha and Zuri over for a Christmas dinner at his home, which was now much more modest after selling his company. The table was set simply, but the joy and peace in the atmosphere made the gathering special. Zuri, with her childlike enthusiasm, opened the first present, laughing and running around the house while Kwame and Aisha watched, smiling. Aisha looked at Kwame, the warmth of the moment lighting up his face. "These months have been good, Kwame. I think we've built something real, something I never thought could exist." He smiled, taking her hand across the table. "Aisha, I've never been this happy. Everything I thought I needed has been replaced by this. By you, by Zuri, by our life together. Thank you for giving me the second chance." She sighed, feeling the emotion of his words. "You've shown me that change is possible. Kwame, I believe that today you are the man who deserves to be by our side." They spent the evening talking about the future, sharing dreams and plans for a simple yet meaningful life. Kwame told her about a community project he planned to invest in, something he wanted to start to help struggling families, inspired by what he had learned from Aisha and Zuri. At the beginning of the following year, Kwame took an important and unexpected step. He proposed to Aisha, this time in a true and honest way. He asked for her hand in a small ceremony surrounded by close friends and family, where he committed with an open heart to being the partner and father that Zuri and Aisha deserved. As he looked at Aisha while they exchanged vows, Kwame knew that this time his commitment wasn't driven by pride or competition, but by the genuine love he felt. Aisha accepted, smiling with tears in her eyes, knowing that after all the suffering, she had finally found someone who truly understood and valued her. She felt ready to start a new life, free from the shadows of the past and with sincere hope for the future. Life from then on was marked by small moments of genuine happiness. Kwame continued his work on the community project, while Aisha dedicated herself to helping other women who, like her, had faced hardships. Zuri, now surrounded by love and stability, grew up happy, knowing she had a family that supported her through everything. 1 year after their wedding, Aisha and Kwame received news that deeply moved them. They were expecting a baby. The arrival of this new member brought even more joy to the couple. For Kwame, it was the realization of a dream he hadn't even imagined. He had the moment he held his baby for the first time. Tears of happiness streamed down his face. Aisha watched the tenderness with which he held the child, knowing their family was finally complete. Aisha knew that after so much suffering, she was living the fresh start she had always dreamed of, for herself, for Zuri, and for the child she now had with Kwame. This new life, built on sincerity and love, was everything she had ever wanted, and by Kwame's side, she felt whole. Kwame squeezed her hand, smiling. "Thank you for believing in me, Aisha, for giving me the chance to be a better person." She looked at him, returning the smile. "Thank you for proving I was right to believe." As they walked together now as a united and complete family, Kwame knew that the bet, pride, and money had been replaced by something infinitely more valuable: true love and the certainty of a fresh start. True love and genuine change can overcome past mistakes and superficial motives, leading to meaningful and lasting relationships. Ya Allah, guide us to seek sincerity in our hearts and actions. Grant us the strength to forgive, the wisdom to change, and the love that builds bridges between different worlds. May our lives reflect your mercy and kindness. Ameen. Did Aisha do the right thing by forgiving and trusting Kwame again? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to know what you think. Your input is very important to us. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more narratives like this. Thank you for watching. Ya Allah, guide us to seek sincerity in our hearts and actions. Grant us the strength to forgive, the wisdom to change, and the love that builds bridges between different worlds. May our lives reflect your mercy and kindness. Ameen.